So let me get this straight. You're giving me a free Paradoxica, free even better Crown of Eyes, and baking them into a skill that has higher damage scaling than basically everything in the game that isn't a slam or retaliation skill? And what's the catch? It's that skill Marauder gets on the beach? I think I can work with that. Hello Exiles, this is Ryan from Behind Eyes Gaming, and in today's video I'm going to bring you the build guide for my heavy strike of Trarthus Inquisitor, a build I've been playing for a while now and that's evolved into an all-content viable powerhouse. In this build guide, I'm going to start you off right from the beach, get you started early campaign, then I'm going to give an update for the mid-campaign, and then I'm going to get into early maps. And then I'll get into the final version of the build that should be able to do most content, and I'll even show the build as I currently have it available with mage blood and a lot of expensive gear all set up. It's not anywhere close to being fully optimized, and it still absolutely destroys everything. So let's get started with the campaign and early maps. I will have all three of the POBs in the description below. I'm going to start off with the leveling POB, which I put together. And in order to configure these, I have these set up into 3 stages: early game, mid campaign, and early maps. And you'll be able to set the configurations in the settings for the tree, skills, items, and configuration in order to follow along with the guide. Let's start off. I have us here at level 21. And what do we have? Well, we have 2 ways to start. One, you have Heavy Strike of Trarthus already, and you are going to go ahead and just start playing it right from the beginning. And 2, you don't have it yet, or you'd rather just play Smite. Now, you can do either one of these, and you're going to start off on the beach a little bit differently. You'll get the ability to do early on quests and get things like Ancestral Call. Starting right out of the gate, you'll do the medicine chest quest, you'll get Ancestral Call, you'll use that, and then you can also go all the way up to the prison, and you can grab either added lightning damage or added fire damage to add on in addition to that. And the early, once you beat Brutus, you'll pick up Precision. You can also pick up Clarity and or Vitality if you'd like, but Precision is necessary as you will be lacking in accuracy pretty much the entire time. You're always going to have to work with fixing your accuracy, but you'll be helped along later on once you get Shaper's Touch. The early skill tree is going to look something like this. You are going to definitely want early on Righteous Fury so you can get the attack mastery for non-vol strike skills, target 1 additional nearby enemy. Once you have this, you can replace Ancestral Call, and you'll definitely want to do this before you're in Act 2 and getting everything going there. You'll also want to pick up Precision as it will help you with your Leap Slam, which I actually don't have in the early game currently, so let me just go ahead and add that. You would be getting Leap Slam with faster attacks and momentum. And then other than that, all this stuff in the very beginning, these are all going to be pretty good. Retribution, Discipline and Training, Holy Dominion for some extra resists and a bunch of damage, Divine Fervor of course, and if you're playing the Heavy Strike of Trarthus, Light of Divinity. If you're not, you can skip this one, save 2 points, start to go elsewhere. You can also just choose to not take either Divine Fervor or Light of Divinity early on, possibly even skipping Holy Dominion, but more or less you can't really go wrong getting most of the notables in this area early on. You'll be quite powerful. You'll have plenty of strength and intelligence, as a lot of these nodes give it. You'll have some extra decks as well. So once you get into Act 2, you can pick things up like Herald of Ice, Herald of Purity. Also, Ruthless is considered for these kind of slow big attacks with staves, the best support skill you can get early on, so you may as well pick that up as well. And then as far as gearing goes, very simple. Things like damage and attack speed on a staff are what you want to go for. You want the biggest damage, preferably physical damage, but in the beginning of the game it doesn't matter that much if you get some elemental damage rolls on a rare staff, for instance. You definitely don't want to be turning that down. If you're playing Heavy Strike of Trarthus and you can get a staff that has both damage rolls and spell damage, that's even better, as the spell damage is going to scale quite highly into your attack damage. And then things like life and resistance, you'll want movement speed on your boots, of course. Flat damage you can get on like jewelry and gloves. Attack speed on gloves is fantastic, definitely something worth considering. All of your life and resistances stuff, as much as you can get. My setup here, just to have close range, since you'll be attacking from close range, and other than that, nothing special in the setup for the early game. Alright, let's move on to the mid-campaign. Here we have a nice, interesting little setup. As you can see, I did decide potentially to go with Spiritual Command along with Redemption and Spiritual Aid. You can get a lot of damage and attack speed this way. You get a total of 16% through here, and then you get another 16% through here, so you get 32% attack speed, plus you'll get a bunch of damage as well, benefiting from things like Retribution, which also gives you minion damage, and the nodes going through here will give you a bunch of minion damage as well, so you'll get 46 from that and 15 from this. So that's an extra 61% damage you get doing it this way, along with a bunch of attack speed. However, if you do happen to be playing this as not your first character of the league, and you're able to either fund or you have jewels with a bunch of attack speed, you can grab these 2 jewel slots on your way down to getting Tribal Fury, and maybe pick up Berserking as well to help supplement it for the 14% attack speed here. And if you opt to do it that way, you can kind of skip out through this, maybe path along the side here instead, so you can start picking up your staff nodes instead. If this is your first character, if you're starting it in solo self-found, Spiritual Command, Redemption, and Spiritual Aid will give you a huge boost. We're taking Sovereignty through the reservation efficiency, even though it's extra points, just to make sure we can fit everything in comfortably. If you need to, you can lower the reservation on your precision in order to get more mana, basically running a lower level one, whatever you can get away with. For instance, I only need a level 5 with the current setup I have here, and that leaves a lot more unreserved mana. We go from 13 to 59, so that's also something you can do. And I'm also picking up Eagle Eye just as a temporary fix to the problem with our accuracy. But the important things to note are I've gone down to Tribal Fury. You can spec out of Righteous Fury once you get down here, and then pick up the Mastery this way, as the damage isn't super efficient in this area. It's not bad, but it's not great either. And it is a way to get Consecrated Ground, I suppose, if you want to go that route, but I think there's better stuff you can get at this point. You'll also want to, if you're playing Heavy Strike of Trarthus, or if you've swapped over, you'll want to get Iron Will, as it'll give you a lot of damage for 1 point. This is 12% DPS on Heavy Strike of Trarthus. But if you are staying with Smite for now, Iron Will does nothing, so you won't be allocating it. As far as the skills, we now have a setup of Heavy Strike of Trarthus with Fizz to Lightning, increased crit damage, and Inspiration. The Inspiration is going to help us with the mana cost, and it gives us a decent amount of damage and crit. Around this time of the game, we have our first 2 Ascendancy points. We have Righteous Providence, which is going to be giving us a bunch of crit chance. And then we also have Inevitable Judgment, which we will be running until we can get a mercenary setup with Doriani's later on. Doriani's prototype plus minus lightning resist jewelry basically makes it so that you can do a lot more damage than what Inevitable Judgment can provide you with. So we're taking this up until that point. Later on, that'll be Augury of Penitence. And so that's with your first 2 Ascendancies. Other than that, nothing overly important here. You can pick up like life, the staff nodes, anything like that. Eventually, you'll want to change your pathing. Instead of going this way, you'll want to go around the edges, as it'll be more efficient for the most part, cutting out all these points, and especially the case once you no longer need Eagle Eye. As far as gearing, we are looking at just more of the same damage. You can start crafting things to fix anything up. So for instance, if I were to find this very good staff, this is way better than what you're actually likely to find in the campaign. But if I were to find something with fizz damage, lightning damage, attack speed, and crit chance, I could craft on spell damage, for instance, and it would give me a very large boost. That would get converted into about 75% increased attack damage, which is worth quite a few points on the tree. As far as like the rest of your gear, Things like accuracy, life, resistance, intelligence is nice at this point, strength is nice at this point, flat damage, regen's not bad. We'll eventually maybe want some extra regen in some places. Movement speed on your boots, it's the same kind of thing. I also figured at this point you may or may not have picked up some uniques, so I just threw in a Carnage Heart, a Lahoop of All, Belt of the Deceiver. These are just kind of generic uniques that are very common, it's possible you find, and that kind of fit along with the principles of the build. There are probably better uniques you could be using, although there are not really a lot of good unique leveling staves, unfortunately. This is very ambitious gear for level 50 for the most part, but just to give you an idea of what you're looking for. As far as everything else, you're now critting, so you should be shocking, so I've got the setup so that you're shocking, and I have also set it up so we get endurance charges because of smashing strikes, although that's not correct because I don't have that allocated. Forget the endurance charges. If you have the ability to get these staff nodes like all the block and smashing strikes so you can start getting your crit chance instead of getting all of this, I'd recommend that, but the attack speed is very important. But this is kind of the setup currently. Finally, for the kind of basic leveling template that I put together and that isn't necessarily related to my characters as I build them, this is early maps, and by early maps I mean basically up until you're consistently farming T16s, possibly 16.5s, and looking to move on to tier 17s. This is, I currently have it at level 85. You might move some things around, but this is kind of like a no cluster jewels kind of setup with only basic uniques, only kind of your normal starter uniques. I do have it on a 6 link, but it functions fine without a 6 link. On a 5 link, you're still looking at about 1.5 million damage at level 85. It's still not bad. It's not quite ramping up to the stage of the Doriani's version of the build, and part of that is as well lacking accuracy at the moment. Having some more accuracy will really push this harder. But the tree looks like this. We've respec'd out of here to move this way. Important things here, we have Steadfast with Fortify Mastery. We'll later replace all of these points with a cluster jewel setup. We are getting Veteran's Wrath for Rage Generation. We've got Utmost Might, so those things are all very important down here. I needed a little extra dex, so I'm taking Expertise. Don't be afraid to take some of these extra points, and in fact, this is a tremendous amount of damage, 7% for a single point, just to pick up this 30 int here, so keep that in mind as well. Getting some extra int here and there might be a good way. But important things to note, we have the Life Mastery here to give us a bunch of life. If you have a body armor that does not have life on it, for instance this one, it's just some armor and evasion, then you can go ahead and take this. It's 15% life, quite good. Got Devotion, giving increased effect to our consecrated ground, which we get now through Sanctuary and Pious Path, our last 2 ascendancies for now. We've taken Smashing Strikes, so we'll be able to consistently be at max endurance charges. This also opens up the option for Immortal Call, which you can either automatically cast or put on automation. And as you can see, when we hit that, for level 50, we have a big physical max hit with Immortal Call Up. That is the setup there. Still using Spiritual Aid in this version. If you have a big body armor with a lot of energy shield and armor, you take the Armor and Energy Shield Mastery. That gives you 100% increased armor and ES for your equipped body armor. But you will also need your helmet, boots, gloves to all have armor and energy shield. The core uniques of this build take 2 of those slots, so Shaper's Touch and Crown of the Inward Eye, but you'll have to make sure your boots also have armor and energy shield so that you can take advantage of this. We've moved some points around for efficiency's sake, so now we're taking the aura effect to get to sovereignty more quickly, since we wanted the mana mastery for deep thoughts and everything anyway. Still currently in spiritual command, getting enigmatic reach. You could also consider going down to enigmatic defense. This is something that I personally like to anoint. It's a relatively cheap anoint, and it gives a lot of health, 15.6 effective health pool if we were to anoint that, just to help with the accuracy problem, I do temporarily anoint Weathered Hunter. It can also help us with resistances on top of that. I currently have Wrath, although at this point I should still instead have Purity of Elements. Purity of Elements over Wrath at the moment, since we don't have our Watcher's Eye yet. And then the other things to note, got Attribute Mastery with Utmost Intelligence, and I'm just picking up some life to kind of figure things out. You can skip some life in favor of things like maybe Blunt Trauma if you want more damage. You could grab some jewel slots. You could consider going down to Enigmatic Defense. You definitely don't need 4.2k life at level, well, I guess 85 is fine. If you're not playing hardcore, you can drop a little bit of it. You can also just take this like 1 slot jewel slot, 2 slot jewel slots. There's lots of jewels to take instead as well, where you can get life along with other offensive stats. Skills, we are no longer using Smite. However, we are using Vol Smite now, which is going to add a decent amount of DPS. We get 21% if we enable this and then enable Vol Smite. We're never really going to be using regular Smite, so I guess it works out to be quite a bit more, 32% DPS. Big there. We got Blood Rage on automation, Immortal Call on automation. We got our Assassin's Mark on hit setup now. We are using double Purity, Precision, and our double Heralds, Purity of Elements and Precision. We are using Heavy Strike of Trarthus, increased critical damage, Fist of Lightning, Inspiration, Multi-Strike, and Elemental damage with attacks. Item-wise, Hegemony's Era is a okay staff to use up until red maps. You will eventually want to be replacing this with either a very good rare staff, or optimally, you'll actually be able to use the Cane of Kulamek that I will show in the next POB. Beyond the Cane of Kulamek, there's not really another unique staff that you can run up from here. And to get a better rare staff than the Cane of Kulamek, the last upgrade I saw for my build was a 400 Divine staff, whereas I got my Cane of Kulamek for 150 Chaos. For this particular build, the Cane of Kulamek I'm going to show you next is pretty much optimal. Crown of the Inward Eye is going to give us a lot of stuff that we need. You want a body armor with as high armor energy shield as possible. You'll have your Shaper's Touch hopefully by this point. If not, just farm Shaper until you get it. It's a very common drop. Same with Crown of the Inward Eye. It's very common off Cirrus, so you can farm Cirrus until you get it. Without these, you should still have enough damage to do just regular pinnacle bosses, no problem. Ami, we start thinking about crafting minimum frenzy charges even from this point, because we just get them from Blood Rage, and getting them on single target is difficult. And then, yeah, just as much armor, energy shield, resist, life as we need to max everything out. Jewels, physical damage, lightning damage, life, attributes, strength, int, anything like that. Might even want to use some dex, might free you up a point for instance, so you don't have to take expertise here. And for my config for this, I have power charges, I get those on block. I have endurance charges, I get those on crit, using Soul of the Brine King, Soul of Aberath. You'll want to have this while you start farming red altars, which you'll probably be doing for a while. And of course we now have Fortify, which gives us a substantial boost. 36 max rage. We're on consecrated ground, giving us a decent amount of life regen, as are enemies, which gives a decent amount of damage. A shock, but I don't have any ailment effect yet, so I'm leaving it a little low. 30 I think is pretty reasonable. This is against Guardian Pinnacle bosses, which we can be fighting now. We'll do a little bit higher DPS against regular bosses, but I think at this stage it is reasonable to say you're considering running against those. And that's pretty much the setup and the items. Now let's get into the first kind of endgame real world example that was an actual POB of mine. So this is the build with more optimized gear and cluster jewels. So we have things like Lethal Pride, we have cluster jewels, and this is my actual build at one point, prior to getting Mage Blood and everything, just a couple of days ago. Notable differences: this is a good spot for Lethal Pride. You can potentially hit these, and I do have good things on Holy Dominion and Light of Divinity, but I've opted instead to fit in extra Megalomaniacs. You can kind of go through this as you need, but things to point out, you'll want one Megalomaniac with Overlord, or you can take a regular stave large cluster as well for one of your 2 large clusters, which can get Overlord, and that will allow you to get melee hits Fortify for 6 seconds with the staves. So it's just guaranteed Fortify all the time. And other important things to note here, you'll want probably some leech. It's just helpful. So I have a cluster jewel Drive the Destruction and Fuel the Fight. However, I have Fuel the Fight on one of my other Megalomaniacs, so I've spec'd out of that to save 1 point. Other important things to get, Flexible Sentry can be really good. It can help with ailments a ton, especially if you get 2 or 3 of these in combination with jewels with corrupts on them. Other really nice things, you have Martial Mastery that gives a ton of attack speed. You get Graceful Execution, which gives you accuracy, which you need, along with some attributes, attack speed, some crit chance. And it's not bad idea to get some cold damage so that you can chill, and get Storm Rider so that you can generate power charges via Storm Rider. That can keep your crit capped off pretty well. Other than that, you just want some jewels with attack speed, crit multi, life, all attributes. Ones like this are even better, where it's just a bunch of attack speed and crit multi. You'll want to grab your endurance charges, which you generate consistently through smashing strikes. You have a few options for the staff mastery. You have the gain life and energy shield when you block attack and spell damage respectively. You also have the percent defenses that you can get. You could also potentially get the increased life per red socket on equipped staff, the mana being a little less important. And very importantly, we are now running Wrath, which with the Watcher's Eye, which gives us physical damage converted to lightning damage while converted to Wrath. Also have some block chance while affected by Determination in this particular case, which I have now factored in my Mercenary. For Mercenaries, very important to note, we are looking specifically for the Ripper, possibly an Infamous Ripper if you'd prefer, but definitely Ripper. The reason for this, it gives Determination, Vitality, both absolutely insane for the build. It has Tunnel Slam, which can apply Intimidate, and it also has Chain Hook of Trarthus, which makes it so anything it chains will give anyone that hits it rage on hit. So this is free rage, extra rage generation, kind of takes a little bit of the burden for rage generation off of you. You'll still want some, try to get at least 1 or 2, maybe more if you can, but this definitely helps. All of these are very powerful, so Ripper is probably going to be your best possible option here. Looking at the skill setup, I have some backup skills here. So I'm using Trauma currently, but I could use elemental damage with attacks and do more in this particular case. The reason I'm using Trauma is because of Divine Shield, which allows us to recover physical damage prevented. So basically, as we hit with Trauma, we will do physical damage to ourselves, which will be mitigated by our own armor, and that will ramp up our energy shield regen. You can get a huge spike in energy shield regen from this. For instance, this is showing our energy shield recovery is 743. It would probably go up 400 or 500 from here when we are fully ramped on the trauma stacks. So that's one thing to keep in mind. False Smite, of course. Different setup. I now have Enlighten, and I am currently using in this build Rune Graft of Treachery. Keep in mind that your enemies will be affected by your auras, which do not include things like Flesh and Stone, Herald of Purity, and Herald of Ash, but they do include things like Wrath and Precision. Arctic Armor also not included. Most importantly, you don't want to be running Purity of Elements anymore when you put this Rune Graft on, as you will not be able to shock if you do that. We also are basically set up here to where I have the Determination and Vitality from my Mercenary setup. Based on the numbers I get in game, they're 23, level 23. So I've put that to reflect that. And we have, in this version, I'm using Ball Molten Shell, but I do actually think Immortal Call is the way to go after a lot of consideration and testing, because of how quickly we can get back up endurance charges. We With smashing strikes, we do get a decent amount of endurance charges pretty quickly with our attack rate. And Immortal Call is going off infrequently, so you get a huge duration boost from having the endurance charges being taken. You also become basically immune to physical damage while this is up now. So 129,000 physical max hit with it up compared to 31,000 with it off. So that is pretty big. And finally, the Cane of Kulamak. You will specifically want the variety with attack speed, physical damage, and spell damage. This will also come, the attack speed is hybridized with Dex and Int. I think it's only Dex and Int. I don't know if you can get Strength and Int, but you'd probably want to take the Dex and Int version anyway because you are going to need some extra dexterity. Then spell damage can roll very, very high, and physical damage as well. So what you end up with is a 600 DPS staff here that gives you 180% spell damage, which you can then take the 180 and times 1.7 because of the way that it things. This is 306% attack damage you are getting from that spell damage. That is an absurd amount of damage nodes. Like if you look at just what would be considered a regular staff damage node, for instance, 16% damage here, you're getting a lot of these, a whole lot of these. Like this is worth almost 20 of these little damage nodes just for one stat on one item. Increased effective shock, max power charges, reservation efficiency, all of these are good for a Crown of the Inward Eye. Physical damage taken as lightning for your body armor. Max resistances is also good, can be very helpful. There's other things you can use, but I found this to be a nice setup. Shaper's Touch, you can either get attack speed or flat critical strike chance. Both are very good. If you can get both, that's ideal, but that's pretty unlikely. As far as boots, just movement speed, some life regenerate isn't bad as far as a eater or eater implicit, whatever you want on these really. Just kind of fill out your resistances as well as you can. Amulet, same kind of thing. You want just damage, attributes, life, resistance, crit multi, energy shield percent, flat energy shield, anything like that. And I've now got Anointed Enigmatic Defense. As far as your rings, Amethyst rings are usually your best bet, as you're going to have trouble capping your chaos resist unless you have some really good pieces elsewhere. Quality can go towards resistances is one way. Those are kind of expensive. Alternatively, you can just get the life and mana ones, or if you have a lot of attributes, you can go with that. You can also sometimes find some nice discount mirrored items like this as well that just drop from the random mirrors that spawn in maps. A Stygian Vice with good chaos resist. Belts can only roll chaos resist for a chaos stat, so you can basically guarantee chaos res by taking your belt and putting it into your harvest craft bench and just spamming reroll chaos until you get a high life roll and maybe one other resistance. In this case, I also got an open suffix, and I just crafted lightning and chaos resist. So this is giving me a lot of chaos resistance, basically. And jewels, just lots of damage and everything. And of course, you're going to want to get a tincture with attack speed's nice. You can also get crit multi, and then increased effect is probably the best, but whatever works early on is fine. And for the most part, that pretty much covers everything for this version. As far as the setup, I don't have frenzy charges checked because it's hard to get them up consistently here, but if you can consistently get them up or get the minimum frenzy charges, you can see damage jumps very quickly. I haven't added the double damage into the calculations here because I did find out that it is taken into account here. So this is doing just short of 50 million DPS, still very good. Other configurations, because I am now running Doriani's and I have minus 161, it's actually 164 now. I got a slight improvement, which would put me over, but at this point I had a minus 161 Doriani's, getting shocks consistently at 50% because of having the extra ailment effect. getting power charges, endurance charges, no problem. Always fortified. Got rage. We're leeching, which is important because I actually do have lethal pride with strength of blood. Since I have enough life recovery, having high block and having regen, and because I don't have damage, the only thing that'll go through the energy shield is chaos damage. So as long as I'm not taking a huge, like over 4k chaos damage hit, which my max chaos damage hit is 27.8k, I don't really need my leech to recover at any point. So I'm simply using it for strength of blood, which is giving me a considerable amount of physical max hit, 19.7 phys max hit. This is kind of the setup here. We got Sand Stance for our setup here. So, and let's get to the final Mage Blood version of the build. This is where I ended up. There's not that many changes in this version. My average hit is over 10 million per attack in this stage. I just want to point that out. You see this 159 max hit. That's because I currently have a mortal call checked. I unchecked that. I hit, I'm still at 39k phys max hit, which is huge. 171.9k EHP with a mortal call 270. I don't really have any damage shifting, but this can be pushed much higher with a lot more damage shifting, that kind of thing. Also, my EHP would go up a lot, for instance, with spell block, but we're not really getting as much of that as at this stage of the game. Don't really need it that much anymore. Got 35%, but I've scaled my total health pool up high enough to where I don't feel like I always need a super high spell block. So I'm kind of prioritizing other things. Important things to note that are different on the skill tree. We got Thread of Hope, giving us Veteran's Wrath, as well as Nomadic Teachings. Can also pick up Versatility if we're kind of hurting for accuracy, but at this stage I don't really need it anymore. I actually have pulled back a little bit on the Megalomaniacs, only running 2 now, so to save 2 points I get Fuel the Fight. I do lose a little block and spell block because of this, but I've also revamped my Megalomaniacs to be a little bit more efficient. This one's the same, including Mystical Ward, but this one is now different. It has Martial Prowess, Storm Rider, and Flexible Sentry. This is actually a perfect Megalomaniac. This is like the one I would choose out of all of them. I have even more attack speed and crit multi-jewels now as well, giving me more damage that way. I could get even higher rolled and even more and better ones though, so I'm nowhere near the limits there. There's still a lot to be pushed, but I'm now using Runegraph to the Warp as well, which is a huge one. This will allow me to get a bunch of additional stacks of trauma, which really ramps up my damage, as trauma is a buff. So basically I get 30% more trauma stacks. So for instance, if I was stacking, let's say 12 previously, I'll get 16 after that. So that is very powerful. Other things to note, I'm now taking Sanctum Thought with the reduced extra damage from crit strikes. I also have the Mastery, so this is 50% here, and I have Juggernaut, and I was previously also taking this 30% reduced. I did spec out of that and was planning on picking it up the next level I got, which would give me a total of 80% reduced damage from critical strikes. That is the main thing that's going to kill us, so that is very strong. And then my last 2 points going into level 100 would probably just simply go into Constitution and give me an enormous health pool. This is my setup finally. As far as skill setups, finally, I got Awakened Gems. That's the big thing. 2120 gems everywhere that I could. I still never bothered to get an Awakened Enlighten or a level 4 Enlighten, but if I did that, could possibly pull off some more stuff here. I have my weapon as a 6 link, so I'm able to get a full 6 link Enlighten aura setup, which would, be even better if Enlighten could hit all of these. I think mostly everything else is pretty much the same other than just upgraded versions. Configuration is more or less the same, except we now have Elusive. I have boots that are giving me Elusive. So I crafted these Elusive on Crit Strike boots. I was going to try to do Tailwind, but yeah, these are self-crafted boots, very strong. I would prefer to get a Tailwind one, but this is fine for now. And I have a better chainmail now. It's still not perfect. I have a tier 3% roll that I would like to be tier 1, and then I would also have liked to roll a higher additional physical damage reduction, but this is still good enough to get me through like Ubers and all tier 17 bosses, that kind of thing. I've made some slight upgrades to my amulet. I now have a better amulet with more life and more crit multi and more fizz damage to attacks. I still have the same, one of my rings the same, but I did get a slight upgrade to a ring with more energy shield, more life, and then the minimum frenzy charge, and of course mage blood, which brings me to my flasks. I am currently basically using my flasks to get my resistances. If I were to optimize my resistances elsewhere more, I could swap these out for even better flasks instead of this granite, or instead of either the amethyst or the bismuth, for instance. I could get more armor is one of the things I could go for. So yeah, just a lot of upgrades, or I could go a quicksilver for more movement speed, because 79 right now because I'm just running a silver flask. They all have increased effect, some utility skill, and then as well, yeah, something else I needed. So we have immunity to bleeding and corrupted blood here, and we have regen here, which is giving an enormous amount of regen. And then in my calcs, I have determination and vitality, have no reservation, got those set up here. You can see my regen is now very high, reaching over 1000 ES. With max trauma stacks, now that I can stack trauma higher, I can get like 2300 ES regen per second when I'm all maxed out because of the rune graft of the warp. It's very, very strong with my high level trauma and stacking that up quickly. Overall, this is the setup. And that is the entire lifespan basically of getting from the beach to being able to pretty much do everything in the game on the heavy strike of Trarthus Inquisitor. I hope you enjoyed. This has been Ryan from Behind Eyes Gaming, and I will see you next time. Bye.